also so delighted to have Alyson Stoner joining us today. I know you all are super stoked to hear from her in just a bit. But before we do, we're going to do a couple of housekeeping items. Awesome. But before we get started, we are going to be recording today's call. Please do not unmute yourself in order just to be respectful to others. We do have Bring Change to Staff Mind monitoring the chat, so should you need any technical assistance, just type something there and someone will be able to assist you. If you aren't seeing the full grid of everybody, there is a few pages, so you can hit the right button to go and see everyone, or you can hit the top right corner grid or speaker gallery or speaker view in order to see everybody. So for today's agenda, we're going to do a fun connection piece together, going through a poll. We're going to have a brief discussion with Alyson, just talking about finding purpose, and then we'll have a question and answer session as well, which I'm the most excited about. So for our opening activity, we're going to do what we did last week with some fun claps to help us feel energized, excited, wake us up. You may have been on Zoom calls all day today. We want this to be the most fun one. So we're going to stay on mute just to keep the echoing down, but we're going to do some power claps like we did last week. So the first one's going to be a superhero clap, just like what we did last week if you were with us. So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. You're going to clap one time and then shoot in the air like you're Superman or Superwoman. Okay? So 3, 2, 1, clap. Oh, awesome. Let's do it again. 3, 2, 1. Hey, I love it. I love it. This next one's super fun. It's the Diva Clap. So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1 again. We're going to clap and go, hey. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey. I love it. Let's do it again. 3, 2, 1. Hey, all right, I love it. And that's such a fun way just to have some fun, but also kick off your meetings too, just to kind of loosen up everybody. Before we get started with our conversation with Alyson, I'm going to turn it over to Brenna. She's going to help us do a fun poll together. As we learned from last week with our call with Glenn and Kevin, connection is such a high form of self-care right now, and we're all across the country, and we thought this would be a fun way to kind of show how we're all connected and have some similarity. So Brenna, I'm going to turn it over to you to help us get started.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Brenna from our Bring Change to Mind headquarters. I work with our Bring Change to Mind clubs in the East Bay and the North Bay, and also some kind of scattered clubs across the US. So hello to the students that I work with. You'll see if everyone looks over at the chat, I went ahead and put some instructions on how to get to this interactive poll that we'll use to just get to know each other a little bit and see who's on the call. So if you do have another device with you, like a smartphone or a tablet next to what you're using to get on this Zoom call, I recommend that you type in this bit.ly/BC2M poll link into that browser. And that's because if you have to use the same device, that's totally fine, but you'll have to be going back and forth to submit your poll questions and to see all the results of everyone else. So just so you know, so I'll give you some time to check out that poll. Give me a thumbs up if you have that typed into another browser. I just want to, awesome, okay, I'll give a 15 more seconds here before I share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share, and there'll be another way to participate. You'll see in a second. So now you should be seeing my screen, and so you can go ahead and submit where you are so we can see kind of the diverse location and geographic area that everyone's coming in. It looks like NorCal is winning. I mean, that's where I'm at, so woohoo. But we've got a lot from Arizona, Indiana, a lot of SoCal. SoCal and NorCal are neck and neck. Oh my goodness. And can't forget about New York, Vermont. Wow, Indiana, NorCal is really coming ahead here. This is fantastic. I think this is a really great way just, again, to remind all of us that, you know, it's not just the clubs that we're working with in our particular high school campuses, but we have Bring Change to Mind members and clubs across the whole country. So this is really fantastic. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to move on to the next one, and you'll see it go ahead on your screen as well. So I've seen a lot of weird and kind of funky things coming out of the shelter-in-place experience that have become trends. So I know personally my favorite odd trend has been Tiger King. I mean, I feel like nobody can stop talking about it. But also you have these memes that just go on and on when you scroll through Instagram. That is kind of a nice way to get some joy and laugh about the situation, as serious as it is that we're in. A lot of those picture tagged challenges, I see people aren't as thrilled about those. I feel the same way. I'm not going to do push-ups even if you tag me in one of those things. So I see we're all on the same page. Tiger King's going to win. I agree with this. You guys are good people. Awesome. And then last question here. You can go ahead and type in your answer, but some like favorite self-care activity that you found has been really helpful to kind of get through this quarantine and shelter in place. Obviously self-care looks so different for everybody. We talked a lot about this on our call last week, but you see that it can kind of change even when we're in different periods of our life. So I see a lot of yoga. That's something I've personally been doing. Meditation. Hopefully you guys have been using your free Headspace app. Journaling. That's something I've been meaning to do. Exercising. Meditation's getting big here. Yoga, music. I see some smaller ones like improv, Legos, throwing it back to some of those old things. Family time. I know connecting via, video chat and things like that with family and friends has been very important. Music is huge. Reading, friends, painting. That's a big trend right now too, I see in self-care. Wow, this is incredible. I think it's even cool to just look at this and even get some ideas for me personally. Candles, I always have one within an arm's reach, so fantastic. Thanks everybody. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. But hopefully that gave you a little bit of more insight in who's in this call and how we're all kind of dealing with the shelter in place experience. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Emily.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenna. I love that. I saw Beyonce in there. I saw exercise, lots of yoga. That was so great. So great. Okay, so we are going to get started with our conversation with Alyson. We're so excited to have her here. So just a reminder, so we are going to have a brief discussion with Alyson, then take some questions so that she can answer, so Q&A session. So during my conversation with Alyson, you can enter your questions into the chat box. We did receive a couple of questions beforehand too that we'll probably kick off our question and answer session with, but I can't guarantee we're going to be able to get around to every single question or even go in order, just depending on how our conversation's going, but we're going to do our best to get to as many as possible. Sound good? Thumbs up? All right. Well, let me introduce you all to Alyson Stoner, to tell you a little bit about her. Gosh, there's so much to know. So she's a multi-hyphenated artist. You probably know her from television, film, dance, music. You might recognize her back from when she was 6 years old, dancing in the Work It video with Missy Elliott. And she reunited with her last year at the VMAs and recreated that awesome dance scene and even got to be on Ellen afterwards, which was super cool. But today, Alyson focuses on creating content that really just provokes thought and inspires her viewers. And I wanted to point out a few things that Alyson is doing right now that I think is super relevant and important right now, and then she can speak more to this as well. I would for sure check out her short form weekly series on YouTube called Alchemy. It centers on mental health, and also her amazing podcast, Simplexity. So much good content there for you guys. one thing I really want to point out, she's been doing 14 Days of Mindfulness. It's a series focused on so many things: creativity, overcoming fear, finding joy. And she's been leading everyone through her guided meditations during that. And I have personally loved, Alyson, watching your mindful movement series on IGTV. Movement is such a high form of self-care, and I know makes me feel amazing. So Alyson, thank you so much for being here. I know our students are super excited to hear from you. If you want to come off mute and say hello and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Alyson. I've been scrolling through and getting a chance to see you face to face. Thank you for having me. I've been on Zoom calls all day, and this is by far the most fun, so I appreciate it. It's been quite a journey. You gave a wonderful background. If I could just add that the mission behind everything I do is thinking about how I can help people empower themselves, how people can have their bodies returned to them and reconnect mind, body, so that we're able to set a strong foundation and then be the writers of our own story instead of feeling like a victim of our circumstances. And so I had, growing up in entertainment, a lot of decisions made for me, and there was quite a bit of privilege and advantage and positive things that came out of that. But on the flip side, there was also this sense of not having a childhood, not having a story or identity of my own. So through all of this kind of self-work, therapy, studying, not many people know, but I study neuroscience and psychoneuroendoimmunology and somatics, and all of that knowledge, contemplative traditions, wisdom from mentors go into the content that I make for people. So I try to be as thoughtful about it, and not just academic, but also truly looking at every single person on this call. Of course, we come from tremendously different backgrounds. We have such different experiences of reality, and yet there is plenty that does thread us together into this human family. So I'm excited to chat more and answer whatever questions you have. I love the topic of finding purpose. It's highly subjective, so you may notice that what I share is more questions for you to ask yourself than statements about what I think you ought to do with your life. I would much rather create the space and let you go within and trust that you have what knowledge you need, the skills you need to develop, and the answers that you're seeking, because I myself will only speak through my filter and my bias, and you know yourself far better than I do. So I'm happy to share the questions and the frameworks that many of the leaders in my life have provided for me, and that really were a catalyst for me stepping into my own truest path.
Amazing. That's a great point to kick us off on, Alyson. You know, everyone kind of take this and cater it towards what is going to fill you up and what your needs are right now, for sure, because obviously it looks different for everybody. Well, let's start off with this. You know, I was on a call with some student leaders yesterday, and they said they feel very overwhelmed right now. And they also feel like they're starting to lack some motivation because their world's been kind of flipped upside down. Their schedules aren't the same. So what would you say to some of our students listening that are maybe struggling with the lockdown and maybe the lack of routine right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So here's where we get to recognize the power of those chores and daily habits that maybe our guardians or teachers were once telling us to do, and we either listened, or if you're like me, never established a sense of routine, never had a sense of normalcy, pure chaos all the time. So if we want to be able to take this time to, rise above and overcome, and all of these grandiose, motivational, inspirational quotes we see on Instagram about things you can do during this time, we actually have to equally plant ourselves and ground ourselves and dig ourselves deeper into our roots. And if we're wanting to fly high, that means we have to go that much further into the core and make sure we do have that foundation. A routine is going to look different for everyone. Some things that have been helpful for me are things that you already know. Things like making sure my sleep schedule is as normal as possible. For me, I don't look at devices before I go to bed. That will keep me awake forevermore. And I don't look at my phone for the first, I try to for the first hour to 2 hours in the day, because what's happening with our brains neurologically is it's activating the part of your brain that's prone to distraction. So if you're wanting to be proactive, but you wake up and you start scrolling, you're actually training your brain to follow that course of distraction for the day. And it sets you up to be checking your phone far more than if you start with something like writing or reading or exercise or whatever that those first choices are that you're deciding for yourself instead of having a phone or machine tell you what to think and feel. That might be helpful. Also, I think in terms of feeling overwhelmed, in our culture here, at least in the West, most of us we're all in America here. Okay. We have access to so much variety at all times that, you know, it's like we could never be bored. We can find a new show, we can talk to a new person, we can learn a new skill, and there's a lot of access even to free resources. But you might find that even if you try to busy yourself, there's still this sense of something else doesn't feel right inside. I'm just trying to hide from this inevitable kind of going inward and figuring out like what the inner issues are, what are some of my core struggles. For me, I'm diagnosed with anxiety. I've been through bouts of depression. And so to manage my anxiety, because I'm not on medication, to manage my anxiety, meditation is like an absolute must for me, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for you. So something I would suggest, if you feel like you have the capacity to do so, instead of just pursuing, you know, exercise that's like running yourself to the ground and trying to use up the energy, could you turn movement into something that is more mindful, such as yoga? Yes, but I'm going even beyond that and start to consider how you occupy space in this world, how you take up space or contract, and start noticing when you're feeling a certain emotion, what's happening somatically in your body at the same time. Your body from, you know, the moment you were born until now, and even actually while you were in the womb, has been learning and creating these feedback loops. So your feedback loops are designed to help you. They're designed to be like, okay, we've seen this before. We know this is going to happen. This is how we react. Easy, we'll move on. There are a bunch of different shortcuts. Our brain loves to make shortcuts. But when we have shortcuts that aren't actually helping us, we start to see how that can get in the way of being our best selves. So if you're able to, start noticing the thoughts, the emotions, the memories that are stored in your body that relate to this sense of being inside. Does it remind you of any kind of, you know, feeling like you're helpless, or you're losing your power, or you're not able to be heard or supported? And if you can start tracing back and understanding your own feedback loops, then instead of just going in a circle over and over and over again, you can pause that circle and start inserting a new a replacement, a substitute, a new idea, a new concept, such as, an example for me, I'm an introvert, so I actually love to be inside. So that's an advantage I feel. I've actually really enjoyed this time of solace. But for some of my friends, they're super extroverted, and feeling alone, it triggers fear for them, a fear of, some of them have experienced abandonment in their life or neglect from loved ones. And so they're using movement to understand that once they can pause and identify and notice that, they can insert a new thought, which is, actually, these 4 white walls around me, these are blank canvases and I have infinite options. I could create anything while I'm in here. There are no limits. I'm connected to everything and just replacing. So the tool that's called, that I actually learned when I was getting medical care because my body shut down growing up, is catch it, challenge it, change it. C. So you catch the thought or the emotion and you challenge it. That doesn't mean fighting against it. It means actually more so like listening and saying, where did you come from? When did you first show up in life? Are you true at all times? Or maybe are you just trying to like help me out, but you're not actually being very helpful? And then change it. Make sure you provide that new thought. So every time you hear the old one, you can challenge it with the new one and then start mapping out new grooves in your brain. So that's what comes to mind for me. The full body experience, understanding your own body memory, and then challenging some of those long-held beliefs. Because this is actually a time when you think about like, a caterpillar going into the cocoon, a lot of people, if you try to prematurely free the caterpillar before it's ready, it's actually still building its strength by pushing against the cocoon. It needs to struggle in order to emerge as this beautiful, metamorphosis as a butterfly. And so if we're in a little bit of the struggle right now, that is a part of building the muscle of resiliency. And for those of you on the call who have already been through a lot and you might be going, look, I can't catch a break. I fully respect and admire everything that you have already been through and are going through. And I know that it's not fair. I know that it's not how we might have wanted to see, graduation look for people, or we're missing the chance to be with loved ones, or whatever that is for you. But if you're willing to trust the process and to know that as you're building this resiliency, this is molding you into the person you can become so you can actually fulfill your deepest mission and purpose, which may be turning your pain into something powerful and positive. So all of that to say, some days are simply hard and you don't have to muscle your way through them. But if you can, this is a huge key. Learn to be an ally to yourself. For me, when I'm alone, I don't always have someone who I can call. I don't always have, and there are absolutely hotlines and you have people here who love you and care for you and you can reach out to. But if you're in a moment where your own inner critic is beating out all the other voices, how can you be an ally to yourself? That relationship that we have with ourselves is going to set us up to be able to relate to everyone else, to the systems, to create change outside. We really have to go within first. So that's a long answer for our first question, but there you go.
Well, I was scribbling down a bunch of notes. I hope all of you were as well, and I appreciate you recognizing, that they are going through some students are going through a hard time right now. And, you're building a muscle of resiliency. That's such a great way to put it. And, I wrote down, catch it, change it, challenge it. I love it. I mean, when you're going through challenges, coming out the other side, you're stronger for it. You may find out some new things about yourself that you would have never learned about yourself as well. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add in respect to everyone's experience, I recognize that we didn't always choose for the things that have happened to us, right? So it's really important right now to notice what is in your control, and to be that advocate for yourself, so that you can withstand the things that are outside of your control, but then also empower yourself. You don't have to be, the leaf that's just blown by the wind. You can also be the wind as well and direct the course. So, I encourage you to trust that you have more power within, even if you don't tangibly feel it right now.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, let me get to a couple of questions because we have so many coming through and they're pretty amazing. So I'm going to start with Aubrey Reese. Aubrey, do you want to come off of mute and ask your first question to Alyson?
Hi. So I just wanted to say first, I absolutely loved your catch it, challenge it, and change it. I personally suffer from anxiety, and my therapist always encourages me to stop my own thoughts with, "Hello, anxiety, how are you today?" and to just kind of acknowledge it. So it was amazing to hear you say that. And my question is, earlier in the poll, there was a mention of like Instagram challenges and videos. And during this time specifically, there was a lot of pressure to take advantage of this time, like learning a whole new language and learning how to bake and working out every day and bettering yourself. And so how do we as teens deal with this current pressure to succeed that's relevant to our own individual purposes that we're navigating right now?
Mm-hmm. That's a fantastic question. And yes, something that my good friend also says to her own body is whenever she notices things being overwhelmed, she just goes, "Hi, body. Hey, hi, body." It can be helpful to not over-identify with the thoughts or the feelings and to create some distance, some separation. So to answer your question, I kind of want to take a step back and sort of an aerial view at our country. So we were born into a certain set of ideals and principles, and it has shaped our culture and our society, how we treat people, how we treat ourselves. And here in America, we love this idea of work hard, and then if you work hard enough, everyone has the equal opportunity to reach their dreams. Okay, we see that that's not exactly the reality. There are plenty of people who are working so hard, but hitting a lot of different roadblocks. Another part of our culture is this American exceptionalism. It's this drive to be better than every other country, which, by the way, if we would just start listening to the wisdom from other countries, we could make a lot more progress. That's another side note. But this idea that we have got to overcome, and it's through sheer grit and might. And we look at power and progress from a very brute force kind of perspective. And we tend to neglect the power that comes from vulnerability, the power that comes from silence, the wisdom that comes from softness, knowing how to listen instead of try and speak and try to be seen. And so I invite everyone to be a fly on the wall of our own country here and look at how we're turning to social media, and some of us are connecting, but if we're not careful, what we turn it into is just another game of who can be most famous and most seen and liked and adored, even if they're shouting about how hard it is for them or how great it is for them. It's still this sense of exceptionalism. And so I would love to counter that by proposing this possibility that a phrase I use is, if I first find silence, then I can hear the symphony of my day more clearly. If I first find stillness, then I can move more deliberately throughout my day. And here right now, I think a lot of us are thinking about action. We're thinking about the symphony and we're thinking about the movement. What if we actually give equal weight to that quiet space where we're just listening and observing? And, a part of learning, yes, is applying it. But if you're just trying to go immediately to action, you haven't actually become the new thing yet. So in order to do that, the 3 steps that I think about are be, become, act. We in America love to jump to acting, but, and I can't blame you, I'm an actress, but if we aren't actually allowing ourselves to be remolded, then what we're acting out is actually more of a mask than it is a genuine change, right? So allowing yourself to actually love the process of being a human being, not a human doing, and then allowing yourself to become, and then let that lead to your action. It is countercultural, but also recognize that if we were to take, you know, the blinders off that we have in America of just being like so gung-ho on thinking that like, America is funny. We're funny. We're funny. I say that with love. But if we were to look at some other cultures around the world, even within our own country, and see how they view time. Here in the States, we tend to view time in a very linear past, present, future, and it's very straight line. In some other cultures, their philosophy of time, how they actually measure time, is cyclical. So another image that you can think about in this time frame is, even if you're waking up each day in the same room, you can imagine each day like you're on a spiral staircase. And so on a spiral staircase, every time you go around, you might think that you're looking at the same thing you saw yesterday, but you've either, you know, gone up a level or down a level. And I don't mean up as in better or down as in worse. Down can be great. You could be rooting yourself, but just simply understanding that you are changing no matter whether you're doing a lot or just being a lot. And so if you can think about this period as a spiral staircase, what if you start paying attention to, how am I transforming in this day? I'm looking at the same room every day. I'm staring at the same computer, but what is different from yesterday? And start to get to know yourself in that way. I think that might actually lead to more discovery than just trying to, like, you know, check a bunch of things off the list. And then on the total flip side, for those who are normally not applying themselves in direct practical ways, maybe this is the time for your spiral staircase to be, all right, normally I say I'm too busy to do all this stuff, but now I'm not. I'm going to check some things off the box. So the next time I see myself in my room, I will have gotten that thing done. So just recognizing which side you may be on, but also just acknowledging from an aerial view, there are so many other ways to look at this than what our country might be looking at it as.
That's so good.
I hope that's helpful.
Just, yeah, be human being versus just doing all the time. Just be where you are, be mindful, but at the same time, allowing time to do some things if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Not feeling the pressure too. So, you know, Nakia, you had a really great question. When do you want to come off mute now? I know you asked a couple. Can you ask the first one you typed out?
So, my first question was, I have anxiety and I have depression as well, but I wanted to know how you let your worrying, like how do you stop your worrying and your anxiety from taking over? Like, what are your steps to letting it come down and not just boil up?
Great question. So in all transparency, 2 days ago, it's hard to remember at this point, I had a panic attack. And so my panic attacks actually look like seizures, and I lose control over certain parts of my body. And I was really surprised by that because it almost snuck up on me. Like, I felt okay the rest of the day, but there were a bunch of little things that had been kind of, I hadn't been processing, that I think just tripped me up, and my body did what it does, which is start to seize, and then it shuts down. And so by no means am I going to be the perfect poster child for what will and won't work, especially for your body. But something over the years that's helped me is it kind of has to do with, let me actually think for a second and feel through this. Anxiety for me has a way of feeling like it's my only option, and that I have no other choice but to sit with it, be, taken over by it. And some thoughts and specific like mantras or affirmations that create distance for me tend to help me stop over relating to it. And so there's this thing that I do when I'm not feeling overwhelmed by the anxiety. And by doing it in a time when it's less apparent, it seems to make the waves of anxiety more manageable when it does hit, because I've done the work in the interim. And so when you're feeling like, okay, now's a fairly even moment, sometimes in order to face anxiety, I give anxiety a literal face. Like I actually picture anxiety as someone I can recognize and have a conversation with. And just by doing that, it already allows me to see that what anxiety thinks about the situation is not necessarily what I have to think about it, but I can learn something from them. I can ask, like, what are you trying to protect me from? What do you feel is threatened right now? And still have a sense of distance from it. And so by allowing myself to have these conversations when I'm in a more stable place, it seemed to help the waves go down. And then when the waves really are just overwhelming, I am a strong proponent of finding whatever breath cycle you need to, in doing it for however long it takes to come down. And I promise you, I go through moments where I'm like, how long is it going to take today? How many breaths am I going to have to do? And it feels like an hour or multiple hours pass by. And then I feel guilty and frustrated that I've lost time to this thing that seems to be overpowering me. But I have to be very patient with myself, and I have to recognize that as I keep using these tools, it really is making a difference over time. And so I can't judge myself for, how big the waves in the ocean are today. But I invite you, if you'd like to try that exercise of actually kind of sitting down across from anxiety as a being who's separate from you, and then seeing what you might learn about yourself through their eyes, knowing that their truth doesn't have to be your truth. Hope that's helpful.
That's so great. That's so helpful. We had a question that came in before we started the call. We had, let me find it here. Hamina, are you on the call from Napa? Did you want to come off mute and ask your question you submitted beforehand?
Yes, I would love to. Okay. So, hi, Alyson. I'm Humana. My question is, how did growing up in the public eye change the way you perceived mental health?
What a loaded question. That will require a book at some point. So an easy way of putting it, which actually I think we're all experiencing right now, is the sense of being under a microscope and being judged more critically for every aspect of who we are and there are a lot of shoulds going around. We should or shouldn't do this. And those words, oof, they will get you every time on a nice little hamster wheel. And so being in the public eye when it comes to mental health, anything that already existed within me was just magnified by extreme situations. And it doesn't have to be in terms of fame and notoriety. It can be some of the trauma that I went through personally. Any extreme moment, this is shaping us, this time of being inside when it's very different than our typical norm. It will tend to heighten what's already within. And so what I noticed is that we all are going to cope in some way, but we tend to look at people and how they're coping and judge them for whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, when in reality, all coping is just trying to regulate our nervous system. So yes, there are things that lead to maybe greater suffering or more destructive habits. And then there are other things that look really good from outside. For example, one of my coping mechanisms for mental health was being a perfectionist about it. And so I was overachieving. And so to everyone else on the outside, they were saying, wow, this is such a powerful person who's overcoming this. She's doing a good job. When in reality, I was still just covering up the same kind of suffering. I was just choosing things that looked good on the outside. And so for me, when I think of mental health, physical health, I really try to take the masks off of everything and the judgment of what health ought to look like on everyone, and really just start to ask myself, what does balance mean for me? And something that's helped a lot in this time, as I've gotten a little older and I've seen, that things really do ebb and flow, is that when we talk about being balanced, a lot of us get caught up in this pressure to stay perfectly balanced at all times. And really, the nature of life is more like a pendulum, right? And so instead of this word homeostasis, which is like, that state of relaxation and ease and equilibrium, it's actually, I think the word is allostasis. It's less about staying stuck there and more about learning the art of coming back to it after we inevitably are going to be swinging one way and another way. In one single day, my mind visits like 30,000 places, right? We on average have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. If we're trying to tell ourselves to just be perfectly balanced with all of those thoughts, I'm not sure we're experiencing our human nature. So really, the way I approach mental health now, whether it's, in terms of how I speak about it being in the public eye or just in my own life, is more about how can I learn to come back into balance and to make those extreme moments feel less overwhelming and more manageable, so I stay more so here instead of feeling like every day is this pendulum. I'm just trying to kind of keep it here, because then there's surely going to be the stuff that is out of our control that does kind of shock us or surprise us or, blindside us. So yeah, being in the public eye is so strange. It's immediate insight into just how many ways someone can interpret an action. I can say one thing and I can see thousands of comments come in and none of them interpreted what I said the same way. So that really allows me to see just how diverse we are in terms of our experiences and in our beliefs, but then also how much I have to learn how to accept myself fully, because I'm going to be misunderstood by people. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be ridiculed. I'm going to be misunderstood. And that can be so difficult when I'm by nature, like, I just want you to get me. I want you to hear me and see me and accept me for who I am. And so with my mental health, I'm learning, okay, I need to learn how to accept myself, knowing that others might not offer me the same. But the stronger that I make my core, the more I'm able to then engage with people and not take what they're telling me so personally, but then also be of service and learn how to listen and be like, okay, that's your deal. That's not mine. We can have, different things going on at the same time, and I can support you in your journey, and, you can do whatever you want at me, toward me, and I'm going to stay in my peace.
So much inner work there. I love that. I love that. Logan, you had a really great question for Alyson. Do you want to come off mute and ask?
Sure. So I myself have to work every day because I have an essential schedule. So my schedule is actually pretty cramped with school, work, and everything going on at home, and also during the pandemic, and it's creating a lot of stress on me. And usually what I do is, like, if I my stress starts to overload and my anxiety kicks in, and then I start to rush things, would it honestly be a good idea to just step away and take a break for just like a minute?
Do you mean within your schedule, or do you mean actually ending some of your current obligations?
Like during the schedule.
During the schedule. I was going to say, do not let me make that other decision for you. Yes. Okay. So here's what I'm learning right now, because even though I'm working from home, my work days could easily stretch to about 20 hours. And that is not sustainable. And I can't actually perform and do my job with that much on my plate. It's counterintuitive, but I'll tell you two things. So there's a brain coach, Jim Quick, and he and I were talking about productivity, about finding schedules that are sustainable. And he actually says that our brains work best in chunks, and then pausing and stepping away, and then returning with just a little bit of free headspace, we can actually be more productive. But my tendency is to think that if I put in more hours and if I just drive the point home and go straight through, that's the easiest way to get to the finish line. For me, I'm learning, and it's hard for me to admit this, but I'm learning right now that I actually do have to build in breaks. But no one is going to build in those breaks for you, and you may have to learn how to set boundaries with people and your space and even yourself. For example, if you have, an hour-long meeting, can you ask for that meeting to be 55 minutes instead? So you have 5 minutes to decompress, reset, digest whatever you need to think about, and then go into the next thing. If you're back to back to back to back, my suggestion, just based on my experience and what I'm learning from other experts, is that creating those chunks and giving yourself those pauses really allows you to return back to the rhythm. You'll find that if you don't do these things, inevitably it will catch up, but it might not manifest in ways like, some people talk about feeling burned out. Well, a lot of us don't really have the option to burn out, so somehow we just keep going. But you'll end up seeing it show up in your mood, in your health. You might be prone to sickness more easily. It might not show up this year. It might show up later. And so I do encourage you to kind of look at the long game of this and think, like, now is not forever. So, what I'm doing right now might not have to be my normal forever, but what can I do so that if this lasts a little longer than I was expecting, I'm not going to be a sinking ship. And so I do suggest giving yourself those breaks, but that is totally your call to carve out that time, because man, people will be texting you, you'll want to check Instagram, and you know the difference from when you give yourself a break to rest and when you give yourself a break to distract, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's helpful. And also many kudos, much respect for everything that you're balancing. It's not easy. It is not easy.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Logan. We got time for just a couple more. I'm going to ask Alexis to ask her question, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute for us.
Should I say the question that I submitted before the call or the one that I asked on?
The one just now that you submitted.
Okay, I gotta go back to what I said. Okay, so
Gave us the warm and fuzzies.
oh, sorry. Okay,
No,
so
it's good. It's good.
so I personally deal with anxiety and depression for a very long time. And it's very difficult for me because, you know, being on medication, I've always felt like I couldn't be, I didn't feel like I belonged here. I didn't feel like I was helping anyone. And being in this club in my high school and starting at my high school, you know, it distracted me and it made me feel like, wow, like I'm actually helping people, and that's what made me keep going. And with this whole thing of staying home, like it's really been hard on me because I'm like, man, like I'm stuck at home, like I can't do anything, and not being able to do anything, I just feel like I don't have a purpose. So my question was like, how do you think, like, would I be helpful in a way? Like, how can I reach out to people? What should I do to better myself, my mentality on that I do belong, and just stuff like that?
Incredible question. I have so many thoughts. So first, it is each of our personal journeys to learn how to acknowledge and value our worth without it being attached to what we're doing or what we offer people. It's not to say that that isn't important, because being social creatures and using your skills to serve others is a huge, beautiful aspect of this life. So I know that you and I and all of us are learning constantly that even if everything changes and we are alone and we are hanging out at home, our worth hasn't changed. And that, I think, is just something to consider, like how much we place our value in what we're doing or what we can do for others, or whatever skills we can learn. But that's just like, you know, that's just like a side hum thing that can just be in the background. Another thought when it comes to finding purpose and living purposefully, this idea changed my life. Two ideas. Okay. There's one called the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line is what some businesses use to make sure their product is good for people, good for the planet, and good for profit. I mean, they're a business, so, you know, they got to make money as well. But when you're looking at your long-term goals or even your short-term goals, splitting things into those categories and then listing out what you think might be able to align with those categories might give some ideas as to what is available during this time. But going one step further, because I could give you practical advice and I could be like, yeah, just do this. And you could just do that. But I feel like there's deeper questions going on. And again, this spring coach, Jim Quick, he rocked my world when he said, throughout the course of every day, we're all asking a dominant question underneath everything we do. Everything we say, every tactic we try to use in a conversation, what we're trying to get out of something while we're pursuing our goals, whatever, there's a dominant question that's underneath everything we do. And if we can dig deep to figure out what our dominant question is, we might then understand why we're trying to occupy our time with certain things or certain relationships. But we also then can choose a new dominant question that might spark some ideas. So if you feel like in this time you're kind of hitting a wall, like you've run out of ideas, or the stuff that once worked isn't working, perhaps you might want to address your dominant question and change that. So I'll give you an example from my own life. When Jim asked me this, he said, "What question do you ask the most every day?" And at first I was like, well, I'm like, what's for dinner? Or like all of the conscious level questions. Then he was like, okay, go a little bit deeper. What's underneath that? It's like, okay, my dominant question is, how can I make every day count? Like that's something that every day I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to live purposefully. I've got to do this. And he was like, great. Okay, that's admirable. Now what's underneath that question? And I realized what had been driving me for so long was the question, how can I be important? Because then I'll matter. And once I cracked that open, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm constantly trying to be there for everyone and do as much as I can. And so, but that's going to be operating from a place of neediness, right? Not wholeness. And so I was like, okay, I need to actually shift this question. And I'm still working on what that new question will be. But I'm wondering if in this time you might do your own exploration and say, okay, what question do I ask myself the most every day? And what's underneath that one? And what's underneath that one? Because if you can get to that dominant question, then I think all the power has returned to you and you have infinite possibilities and some insight as to what you value and want to value moving forward. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
That's so great. Thanks for asking that question, Alexis. And that's great. I mean, finding your dominant question and just digging in deep. And like you said, that's probably changing as we're evolving. The seasons of our life are changing as well. So Alyson, we are going to go ahead and wrap up. We are so appreciative of you taking the time to chat with our students tonight. I know we wanted to get a couple of snapshots with everybody. I think we'll have to take 4 pictures. Is that right, Brenna? Is there 4 pages of us?
Yes, we'll do it real quick.
Brenna will count us down so we can smile and get a nice picture.
Awesome. Okay, page 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I love the hands and the frames. I think that makes it fun because you don't know which page you're on. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And last page. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone.
I love it. I love it. Alyson, where can everyone connect with you and find you online and continue with your 14 days of mindfulness as well?
Yes, we finished the 14 days, but I am making new content in the next week. Add that to the to-do list.
Right.
And you can follow me just with my name, Alyson Stoner. And I'm going to pretend like y'all don't know how to spell that, but I know you probably do. And if I could leave you all with one thing, this quote has been helping me so much. It's from Octavia Butler, who wrote a book called Parable of the Sower, and I'm reading it right now. And in it, she says, all that you touch, you change, and all you change, changes you. So I would love for you to just sit with that. Let me know your thoughts. DM me if anything comes to mind, or share it with your leaders here. And yeah, just be okay with wherever you are and whoever you are right now. You're enough in this time. Everyone else who's trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, that's their thing. You do your own thing.
I love it. Alyson, thank you so, so much for joining us. Again, we so appreciate your time. Can everyone tell Alyson, give her a wave, tell her thank you, all the good stuff?
Thank you.
Awesome. So everyone make sure you check your
Thank
emails.
you.
We'll have an evaluation coming your way, and make sure to give Alyson a follow on social media. So thank you all again so much. You're free to go.
Thank you, Alyson.